Let me just welcome everybody. This is kind of an experimental meeting. I hope everybody enjoys it, in that this is Sabre Baseball Cards kind of joining forces with Sabre Chicago to present three really impressive Chicago-themed player collections. We're going to see John Racanelli's Hack Wilson collection. We're going to see Chris Kamka's Carlton Fisk collection, we hope. And we're going to see Jeff English's Dave Kingman collection. So, one of the things I just want to throw out there, I put it in maybe one of the emails or something like that. But if you're from a non-Chicago chapter and you think in your chapter there's kind of a local hero or a trio of local heroes and some card collectors to match, I think this is a model that can be replicated,
Mm.
right? All it takes is collectors and players they collect. So be thinking about it if you're from anywhere but Chicago for that. So with that, I'll share what probably was the obvious for some of you. For security reasons, we didn't publicize this link very well. The drawback of that, for sure, is we've probably got fewer people than we normally would. This would have been a terrific opportunity for recruitment of non-members that have a lot of fun and want to join. As it turns out, it's probably 95% members. But if you were here for the last Zoom, you know why we kind of locked things down a little bit. So the good news is everybody here is what I'll call a trusted member or guest. And so it should be good, clean fun, a PG rating, let's hope, right? I suppose if Baltimore Babe Ruth chapter ever decides they want to get in on the fun, it could go above a PG rating, depending if there's any Ripken collectors. But we're going to keep it clean here. Another nice advantage too, one of the security things, at least that Zoom makes available, is we could just mute everybody and never let you have your microphones go, but that's not as fun, especially in the Q&A. So again, by not publicizing the link, we just have trusted people here. It's a smaller crowd than we might have, but you're all free to enjoy yourselves to the maximum extent, we'll say.
Not too much.
Yeah. Well, right. There are limits. Decency applies. Okay, fantastic. With that, I've got maybe three different individuals that might do sort of a mini announcement before we jump into the main program. I'm going to start with Bill from Sabre Chicago. Bill, if there are any Chicago related announcements that you want to make.
Sure, yeah. Again, if you haven't met me before, I'm Bill Perch. I'm the secretary and newsletter editor for the Chicago chapter. We are starting work on our fall newsletter. So if you have any content, articles, photos, any material you'd like to share, if you can email me by Sunday, September 21st, we'll make sure we get that in. And also, if you attended a few weeks ago our Remembering Rhino session, first of all, thanks to everybody who joined and shared your thoughts. We did a request if you had any photos with you of Rhino that you'd like to share. Same thing. Get those over to me by the 21st, and we'll make sure those are in the next newsletter. And as I mean, we were joking a little bit about our last Zoom, but we do have a rescheduled date. So we will see you Saturday, September 13th. We will revisit the Satchel Paige project, and I'm looking forward to that one. So other than that, it was great to see everybody at the King County Cougars game against the Dogs on Saturday. We were there for a clincher. So I want to know who's going to write the Sabre game summary of that one. So other than that, back over to Jason.
Okay, sounds good. Next, what I want to do, I know we've got another event, at least Sabre baseball cards or maybe Sabre baseball cards adjacent. And so Sabre Baseball Cards Events Vice Chair Matthew Glidden, sometimes known as Spike, is going to just share a little quick information on that.
Yeah, so it's a fun combo. That was actually a ticket I have sitting right here on my desk, a Chicago Dogs ticket from the National. It's so easy to walk over when you're there in Chicago and take in a game. Great setting, especially if you enjoy planes flying overhead every 45 seconds or so. In short, next Thursday, the 11th, we have a celebration, remembrance, a recognition of the 90th anniversary of Babe Ruth's retirement here as a Boston Brave. He did so mid-season, so it's not talking about Babe so much as an individual performer, but more what does it mean for Babe to finish off his career the way that he did here in Boston. There'll be people representing Boston from a few angles, and I'll be handling the card side of things. And I hope to show people a different side of the collectibles of Babe before and after his, of course, lengthy and famous Yankee tenure. And that's right there on the calendar for SABR. So easy to go in. We'll make it as secure as we can, but it is part of the public calendar right now to register.
Okay, fantastic. And now I'm actually going to do kind of a special announcement. I don't know if announcement's the right word, but we have somebody I'm considering a special guest today. He doesn't know that I'm doing this or that I'm considering him a special guest. But it turns out that we have the grandnephew of Bob Davids on the call today. And so we also have a Bob Davids Award winner. Maybe we have more than one, but Mark's the one I'm familiar with. So, Mark, given that we've got Bob's grandnephew on the call, I wonder if you'd want to just share a few words about what Bob's meant to the organization or what he meant to you personally.
Sure. I'll try and do that a little bit justice. I think unfortunately, um, I was not really part of SABR during the glory days, I guess, of Bob's reign in the 70s when he got this thing started. But briefly, Bob, of course, was a super baseball fan, and back in the 60s he would contribute guest articles to the Sporting News back when you could do that. And he was just he was a federal employee. This was just his side hobby, like many of us. And over that period of time, he managed to collect a lot of correspondence or people that he got to know through letters to the editor. And he would just sort of jot down the names of people that he thought were interesting to talk to or to communicate with. And mostly this was in cards and letters kind of thing. And then at some time in 1971, he decided that wouldn't it be fun to get together and see if any of these people would like to form an actual organization. And he wrote to all of them. I think he sent out something like 40 letters or somewhere in that ballpark, maybe a little bit more, not too many more than that. And 16 of them, including him, went to Cooperstown, New York in August of 1971. And most of these people had never met each other. Probably some of them didn't even know who was going to be there exactly, other than Bob. And Cliff Cackline, who was the host of the meeting because he was the head researcher at the Hall of Fame. So he offered his space. So that's how it started. There were 16 people, and those 16 people did a lot of the legwork for the first several years. I mean, Bob was the head of the board, which was formed, and then they started forming committees, essentially one at a time, bibliographic and records and Negro Leagues. And just remember when I joined, which was about 10 years later, 11 or 12 years later, actually, it was all, this was before there was no internet. So any kind of communication that you would have with other people was going to be, through letters and maybe phone calls if you had a few spare dollars that month. And occasionally there would be local meetings, but this was mostly handled in what seems like a very quaint, old-fashioned way, and it was a lot more work. And Bob kind of had to hold this together for a long time. And I don't want to shortchange the other people. So the first time I went to a national meeting was in 1984 in Providence, and I went because I lived about 5 miles away. So I showed up and I did meet Bob, and Bob was the kind of person that just sort of met everybody. I was nobody, but he, came over and asked me who I was, and we sort of chatted. I didn't really, have much of a resume for quite a long time. But I did enjoy all the stuff that SABR was doing, which was largely a newsletter and a couple of publications a year. And I think, Bob was gregarious, and I hope that the people who followed him, and I've done a little bit of that, and Jason and lots of people here that have taken leadership positions, have carried on his legacy of inclusion, of welcoming people into the group and welcoming new ideas, new kinds of committees that they couldn't possibly have even imagined. I don't know what he would have thought about an artificial intelligence committee, but we have one of those. Um, and I think that he created a process and a group that was self-sustaining, such that when he kind of stepped down and started to just be a regular member, um, things continued to flourish. And I think the people a dozen, 15 years after he founded it, they created the Bob Davids Award, and Bob Davids did not like the fact that this award was named after him. Because he was not a horn tutor, but nonetheless it was. And I'm really proud that it still exists, and that I want it mostly because of Bob. It's good to have Bob David's name in some story that you're in. So it's great. I mean, it's changed my life in great ways, and a lot of that has to do with the fact that I've met many of the people on this call, but it all started with Bob. So I mean, I thank him every day.
Man, well, Mark, thank you very much. So, welcome, Phil. Welcome, Phil. I hope you enjoyed a little bit of reminiscing around your great uncle. And then with that, John, are you ready? I think in today's game, Hack Wilson would be a leadoff batter. So, you want to just go first and take it away?
Sure. If I could just do one announcement for Chicago SABR, though, kind of hot off the presses, we've got a Zoom set up for Wednesday, September 17th with Paul Caputo. If you know him as a correspondent for sportslogos.net, he's the host of the Baseball by Design podcast and a king of baseball ice cream helmet collecting. So we've got that set up, and some announcement will go out shortly for that. But yeah, with regard to Hack Wilson, I think might have been a mistake to ask me to talk about Hack Wilson because we have a time limit tonight. Is that true, Jason? So, but I, I recognize, I don't know, half of the people on the call. The SABR Baseball Cards Committee is robust and fun and engaging, and I've probably traded cards with half the people that I see here. So it's really fun. I know that there are some heavy hitters on here too. You could see, for instance, Mark Hoyle's background. He's got quite a collection, and I'm waiting, for his turn to talk about his Red Sox collection. But with regard to Heck Wilson, it's basically just kind of, I'd say since 1920, since 2020 is when I started kind of collecting or started collecting more in earnest. And I had kind of gotten to a point with my collection, throughout the 80s and 90s. I think, like a lot of people here, I was amassing giant stacks and boxes and all kinds of stuff that ended up not being worth anything. So, probably about 15 years ago, I went through everything, all my complete sets. I just cherry picked out the cards I wanted. I picked the Cubs out, I took the White Sox out, and a smattering of Hall of Famers. I kind of got to a point where I decided I don't really need to own any Kent Herbeck cards. I don't need to own Ozzie Smith cards. I want Cubs
Whoa,
cards.
whoa.
Those are my guys. And so this is kind of where I've gone with my collection from, as you can imagine, boxes upon boxes and moving boxes and probably hundreds of thousands of cards down to what is mostly in these binders. And it's pre-war through oddball. And then the last one is Heck Wilson, who I collect regardless of what team he's on. So everybody always likes to ask why Hack. And I think it started for me when I was a kid and I saw this particular picture. I mean, it didn't hurt that I ended up being about as tall as he was and just couldn't understand the torque that he was able to generate to hit baseballs when he was really just a little guy, right? And as a kid, these numbers here, 56 and 191, 190 when I was a kid, but 191 recently, just blew my mind.
for the longest time, that 56 was the National League home run record, and the 190 and into the 191 is a record that I think needs to be talked about more often, and one of those numbers that's never going to be broken, because that is just an awful lot of runs batted in a given season, especially knowing that he did it well before they'd switched to a schedule of 162 games. So as far as Hack Wilson, let's take a step back. You see Bill Perch here, and this is a picture taken by Jason Schwartz. Back in 2021, Bill and I went on a Hack Wilson Trail tour. We started off at Wrigley Field by the Hack Wilson marker. We had to do a little bit of breaking and entering and or convincing the security people there to let us in because they were loading in for a Guns N' Roses concert. Normally, this is just an open sidewalk area, but we started there. We ended up first in Elwood City, but before we got to that point, um, this is another one of the pictures that I loved. This is Hack standing in front of his house in Martinsburg, West Virginia, with a stack of these wagons. As far as I know, in the research I've done, none of those 4 wagons has ever turned up. And I don't know that they were ever produced. This might have been a promo picture, and that's as far as it went. So Bill took this picture of me. Luckily, that stack of wagons was still sitting there, and we had a good time in Martinsburg before we got out of there because it was not the nicest neighborhood. But we did start the tour in Elwood City. A SABR member out in Elwood City, Don Mancini, gave us the best tour of Hack Wilson sites. And nicely, we also, because we were right next to Wampum, got to see a lot of Dick Allen stuff too. So it was double duty. But beyond this chain link fence, and there's a building there that still stands. There used to be a ballpark here. And this is essentially where Hack Wilson started to learn to play baseball. He was, for all intents and purposes, kind of a latchkey kid. His mom passed away when he was a young child. His dad was an absentee father, and he was really raised by the son of the boarding house owner, a man named Connie Wardman. And Connie showed him how to play baseball here. And in Elwood City, we still have a park here with the access road named after Hack Wilson Way. And in 2023, a marker was dedicated there, showing all of Hack's accomplishments and showing him born and raised in Elwood City. We stopped in Martinsburg, and this is what is now a park and some homes. It's called Roush Field. It's not named after Ed. I don't know who it's named after, but I at least confirmed it's not the ball player. And essentially, this area here, where this alley is where Hack played his very first professional game for the Martinsburg Blue Sox back in 1921. His very first game as a professional, he broke his ankle sliding into home plate on a play, and switched from that point as a catcher to be an outfielder because he just wasn't able to sustain the rigors of squatting behind the plate after that. 1922 in Martinsburg, he set the league record with 30 home runs. The next year with Portsmouth, Virginia, he set the league record with 19 home runs. And then, in 1930 with the Cubs, he set the National League record at the time with 56 home runs. So this was a guy that was smacking baseballs all over the place. Also in Martinsburg is his grave. Interestingly, the company that did the marker also promoted Hack Wilson in their advertisements. And this is a clipping that I was able to find showing the front of the marker there. And our trip ended up in Cooperstown at the Hall of Fame. This is a picture that shows Hack in front of his house. It's actually a different angle of the one that we saw earlier. But he's holding a trophy that the people from Martinsburg, West Virginia gave him. And that trophy actually ended up in the archives room at the Hall of Fame. And through some amazing help from Jason Schwartz, I was able to get to hold that back in 2021 when we visited. As you could see, we were still kind of in the throes of COVID at the time. But in the Hall of Fame, they've got a bat from 1930, showing his RBIs as the 191. And of course, we've got the plaque. And so part of my collection is plaque related things. We've got the green postcard. We've got the yellow postcard that's now available. In 1982, the Hall of Fame made available these copper cards. This is actually metal. And then in 1985, they made these tiny, tiny little embossed plaques. I don't know if you can really see it, but it's essentially a replica of the one that's on the wall in the plaque gallery. And so, like I said, I kind of started getting into collecting hack in 2020. I think, like a lot of us, we kind of had a lot of free time. We were spending time at home because of the pandemic and started getting into collecting again, like pretty much everybody in the world, it seemed. But the first big card that I ever bought was the 33 Gaudy Hack Wilson that you could see all the way on the left there. And I was just thrilled to find that not only was there that one, but there was four separate other different reprints of the card, kind of the essential and initial rainbow of reprint cards with this one. And once you started to look at trading card database, which is something I assume we're all familiar with, you started to realize that there was all kinds of stuff that was available from his playing days. So here we've got his picture pack from 1931. This is a team issue from the Cubs. This is a blue ribbon malt schedule that was issued in 1930. You could see or 1931, sorry, you could see the Hack Wilson on the side there. In 1934 through 36, Batter Up produced, while he was a member of the Dodgers, a number of different Batter Up cards. As you could see, and you'll find this as a theme throughout my collection, I don't really have the biggest concern about condition. I'm just happy to own a card. So even if it's a PSA 1 or whatever one, I'm happy with it. But again, with the rainbow, we've got the purple one, a bluish one. I don't know if this is the brown one or the black one, but I think there's a fourth one out there that I'm looking for. So just kind of fun stuff to collect. And this is the double header coin showing hack. The one that's on TCDB shows it's kind of got a reddish or purplish tint to it. So I don't know if there's more than one of these that I have to get, but these are kind of the fun ones. And some of my favorite cards from those playing days, and I'll try and do this so we could see them, this is the 1928 W513 strip card. So from 1928 being the oldest Hack Wilson card that I have in my collection. From the next year is the 1929 cash in. Beautiful card. I love the big format of it. It's a really awesome card. I love this one. We just looked at the blue ribbon malt from 1930. There's also a poster that they issued. And so this is the hand cut from the 1930 blue ribbon malt poster. 1931, we've got the W517 strip card. Pretty cool picture. And of course, my favorite is the 33 Gaudy. Beautiful card. I love it. Even though it's got rounded corners and a crease, and it was well loved by some kid, I hope, back in 1933. So I also have some periodicals in the collection. This is a magazine from Japan from November of 1930 that I believe was called Tayoshi Monthly, if you can believe Google Translate. Obviously, I can't read anything that's in there, but there is an article about Hack Wilson. They must have been so impressed with his 1930 season that people in Japan were interested in reading about him. And this is a comic book from June of 1950, which is about 2 years after his death. So it's kind of unclear why the timing is what it is, but This is a Marvel sports action comic, so I always like to say that Hack Wilson is part of the Marvel universe, which I think is pretty cool. It'd be nice to see him in a movie at some point down the road. But we've also got some other stuff here, like these two matchbooks, the orange and the green one. These are from 1934. In the lower right-hand corner, this is the 1947 Sports Exchange Mini. I also have the larger one that we'll see later. Next to it is a 1934 trivia game from Quaker Oats with a Hack Wilson question. And then 1960 in the upper left-hand corner, Fleer, which is interesting because it shows him in a Phillies uniform. He only played 7 games for the Phillies in 1934. So I almost suspect that this may have been a career capper card by Fleer, but I don't know. And then the classic 1961 Fleer next to it. A Woolworth card, some kind of Panini thing, and a Donruss History Makers, but I'm still kind of working on getting everything organized and trying to get them into your order. I've got this that I got in a lot, Chicago Daily News. I don't know what it is. I've never been able to find any information about it, so I love having some mysteries. One of the cool things I picked up was a 60 Fleer uncut strip that's also got Frank Chance and Ed Walsh on it, so just some fun stuff there. And I love these, the 73 Fleer patches. Laughlin art, this is a classic. As you could see, the one on the very right there is a little bit sparkly. You may recognize that as a Heavy J Studios original. And also you could see that he corrected, it's a corrected version with the proper number of runs batted in for Hack that year. But these are also based on the 72 great feats of baseball. Got, of course, the red and the blue versions. And then Fleer again used this in 1986 for their stickers, doing baseball's famous feats. And if you're thinking, well, with that Hack Wilson, are there at least 5 different other sticker backs on it that you might have? Of course, I've got all 5 different sticker backs. So don't worry about that. And that kind of brings us to Modern Madness. This is 2023 Panini Chronicles. I'm very proud to say that I've got the 1 of 1, of 5, of 10, of 25, of 100, the base card, and then this one in the lower corner is a 1 of 1 printing plate. It is what it is, right? 2015 Panini Cooperstown cards. All of these are numbered. Then we move on to 2023 Panini Prism, and you think, wow, you must have all of those. Nope, I've got these ones too, and there's probably another 20 of these with the silly different backings and color parallel combos and finishes and whatever they need to get. But pretty much all this is a bunch of newer stuff, including like cards like this, relic cards, where at some point somebody had the bright idea, why don't we take a Hack Wilson bat and we'll slice it up and put silly little pieces of sliver of a bat in each card, right? But this is all for me to keep my ranking. So at this point, I'm at 183 different Hack Wilson cards. That's only counting the ones that are on the trading card database list. If you're familiar with trading card database, you're going to recognize Rolling Thunder. I think that guy must have 5 billion cards, and he's on every single list near the top. I see Wrigley Wax on a lot of the Cubs stuff that I look at too. But essentially, the reason I'm buying this new stuff is to try and keep my lead, and really nothing else. But one of the things that's not on the trading card database, this one is, for instance, but a lot of the cards that I collect are customs, and I love art cards. So what you're looking at here is, I hope, the world's largest collection of 1968 SCFC cards. These are the forerunners to TCMA and Mike Ehrenstein's cards. The MA there, I believe, is for Myron Ehrenstein, and someone correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it's Mike's uncle, and I think his aunt also was involved in some of the drawings for this set and so forth. But I like to think that I have one of the largest single player collections of the 68 SCFC every time I see when I buy it. So if you have one and you're hoarding it, let me know. But some of the fun cards that I've got here, these are art cards. So we've got these two Hack Wilsons at the top. You can see Elwood City on the map behind there. And then the one next to it is Hack. And then in the background is old strongman George Hackenschmidt, who is rumored to have been the person, because they look similar, to have given Hack his nickname. So these are both cards that were made by Chris Kamka, who you will hear from a little bit later. The next one over there is the Hack Wilson with the sparkly border. You may recognize that as Jason's handiwork again. This Fleer one was one I put together, but it was Jason's idea. I love the Fleer stuff with these superstar specials where they would have plays on words or name play. But the George Hackenschmidt, I just love. So that's a fun one. This one here, that's sideways with that picture that I loved and got me interested in Hack in the first place. This is Nick Vosbrink special, and then the 59 clubbers. That's one that I made. I really enjoy a lot. If anybody knows Patrick Bone, Patrick made all of these ones for the first top 3 rows, different colors, different pictures. I love these ones. And then there's some Halmar heart stamps that you probably have seen for other players. Michael Lewis made this one. 84 Tops is my favorite year of baseball card of all time. It's really when I fell in love with baseball and the Cubs and baseball card collecting. And they have a Hack in an 84 format is really, really cool. So just some of the other art cards that I really wanted to show off were, if you know I Draw Baseball Cards, Mark Mosley. This is a 3D hack that's kind of like a little bit of a bobblehead on the inside of it. Really cool. Love it. It's all hand drawn, hand painted, or handcrafted. If you know Ray Bailey, he did a cool Hack Wilson, Kyle Schwarber mashup for me. Your 1930 National League MVP and your 2025 National League MVP on the same card. Pretty cool. Love it. If you know Gummy Arts, Mike Noren. This is the Hack Wilson original. I don't know if this was ever in a set, but that's, I believe, the only one that he ever made. And then I like doing my own stuff too. So 67 Venezuelan art card. Wilson Franks, of course. We needed a Wilson. I grew up on Atari, so I love making stuff like an Atari cartridge, Hack Wilson long ball, good stuff. And just some other miscellaneous stuff. I found this recently, something that I never knew existed before. It is a pocket knife, a Hack Wilson signature pocket knife. Doing a little research, I was able to find that they made 2. This company is called Camillus Knife Company. I believe this is from the 30s. And I was not able to find any more information about it, but the Hack Wilson was one of the 2 knives that they made in this style. 1938, in a suburb of Chicago called Niles, Hack Wilson opened up a restaurant. That restaurant did not even last a year and went under. Fortunately, I think he was either not the best businessman or was taken advantage of or was too fond of sharing his profits by buying rounds for everybody. But one of the things that I was able to get is matchbook from that restaurant, which I think is pretty cool, considering it didn't last very long. I don't know how many of these exist anymore, but it's sponsored by Encore Monarch Beer Company, and I don't know. It's really cool. I don't know if you could see it. but something fun to have. And just some more miscellaneous stuff. A couple of postcards. The top is a George Brace postcard. The bottom one is from the date of induction sent from Cooperstown. I have a bunch of clippings from newspapers I try and find whenever I can. There's another shot of Hack at his house. He's got a deer sloped over the railing. Here he is in this awesome sweater that I wish I could find, pushing his son in that old-fashioned baby carriage. And of course, Jason set me up with the 1948 Topps Magic photo of George Hackenschmidt, kind of a ancillary thing. So that's pretty much it. That's my collection. I wish I had time to show you everything that I had, but I hope you enjoyed it, and I will send it back to Jason. Thanks.
Man, John, that's incredible. I never get tired of looking at your collection. A question or two came in. I'm going to hold all questions till we get through with all three presenters. But John, you may want to go through the comments and know what you're going to be asked. So probably half of you on this call, I'm just guessing, are like, "Oh my God, that's insane! This guy has almost 200 cards, all of the same player," and you're trying to wrap your head around why somebody would want to do that, and maybe how they would manage to do that, even if they did want to. And then half of you are like, "Oh, that's just like my Anthony Rendon collection, only I have 474 cards of him," right? So that's the great thing about the hobby, right? There's room for all of us in it. So with that, I'm going to introduce someone who's going to make 178 Hack Wilson cards look like a really small number, and that's Chris Kamka with a Carlton Fisk collection so enormous you won't believe it. But just for fun, go ahead and type in the chat your guess for how many cards of Carlton Fisk Chris Kamka has. Go ahead and just type a number in the chat, and we'll see if he ends up giving us the answer. All right, and in that case, Chris, just take it away. Yeah. Chris, are you with us? You may be on mute.
There we go. How's that?
Better.
Okay. Well, there's some pretty modest numbers being guessed here. I can say I don't have 12,500. I wish I did. Well, I can say the number is 1,205. Wait, no. Hold on. Mail day. 1,206. That's how many are on trading card database. There's actually way more than that. I'd say probably another 100 or so that either aren't on there or ones that I made myself or some of my friends made. But Carlton Fisk was my favorite player growing up. Was a White Sox fan growing up. And he just had a cool name, a cool different number, and a cool nickname. Number 72, Pudge. Looked great in those 83 White Sox uniforms. And the 83 Topps All-Star, this was the one that started it all. This is the one that I've had all my life. Since 83. I've had this one from the beginning. Oh, yeah, that's funny, Mark. It's funny. Mark forgot he went to the White Sox. He did in 81. So I started, I really got into it big time, maybe 2000 or so, and then kind of like tailed off. And then, getting together with Jason really helped get me re-enthusiastic about collecting cards. So I credit him a lot. Good group of friends, and really got myself back into collecting. So it's kind of gone off the rails. At first, I only collected White Sox cards, and the one that I'm like, I knew I arrived in collecting Fisk, and pardon this hideous container it's in. I hate these things, but it was the only one available. It was the 93 Finest Refractor. This was my first Mega Fisk card. I'm like, all right, I'm in. So I started going, and I only started getting White Sox cards at first, but then eventually there wasn't really much more to get. So I'm like, I suppose I'll get the Red Sox stuff too. And then, it took me a while, actually. I didn't get my first 72 Topps rookie until only a few years ago. But now I've got 5, including an OPG, including a reprint. So, I've got those now. But I think my favorite one of all time was the 83 Topps. And I have one of those nearby. To me, this is like the most beautiful card ever printed. It's gorgeous. And so then, all right, I need more, so I gotta have one that's like half cut off. And then I gotta get one that's like a parallelogram cut. I don't even know how this happened. I don't know how that's possible. Those two came together. And then you get bored because you have all the regular Red Sox ones, so now you got to get ones that are cut weird. And then you got to get football cards. This is a 1984 Topps football card. And why do I have a Dave Jennings card? Because the fun fact on the back reads, Dave is a third cousin of White Sox catcher Carlton Fisk. So then that's part of the collection. And then you're getting 78 Topps Roy White because Fisk's in the background. And then you're collecting 1991 Donruss, and you got to have 4 copies because you got to have, or 89 because you have to have the one with the period after INC on the back, and then the one with an extra asterisk on the back. And there's all these little annoying things that if you know 90 Donruss, 89 Donruss, 91 Donruss, you know what I'm talking about. And then my eyes gone bad, and I have to wear reading glasses now because of that. And maybe the biggest one that I've ever got was the 74 Decal Edge test. This one was hard to come by, and finally got my hands on it. And I'm proud of that. It's just one of those things where I have a great Fisk collection, but it's just incomplete until I get this one. And then you feel that way about another card. Then you feel that one about another one. Then you have to get these like sewn-on patches from the 70s. And then you got to get all these other ones. I would say of my 1,200 or so, about 10% of them, 120, I have autographed. Here's, for example, a 2005 retired signature. They ripped off the same image from the 83, if you would notice that. And then there was all these oddball Leaf ones, and I've got a page full of autographs. And then I had to get a Tony Perez because Fisk is in the background. So I get an autographed Tony Perez card just because Fisk is there. Never ends. Some of them, I enjoy the fact that he autographed it Pudge. And this one as well, upside down. He autographed it Pudge, so I enjoy that. And then another one of my favorites is, it was a If You Build It, They Will Come Leaf card, which has a little piece of cornstalk in there. And why, well, if you don't know why that's hilarious, Google Carlton Fisk cornstalk. I'm not going to tell the story. One of them that's not in the trading card database is this porcelain card that's autographed. And so, I think it's fun to have the big number in trading card database, but it's ones that aren't in there too. That here's a 1987 negative, 1987 Topps negative from the Topps vault, and they had a little hologram on the back. That's, as far as I know, this is the only one that exists. I've managed to preserve 2 cards with gum stuck to it, and I will not get rid of that. And it kind of looks gross, but I don't care. Like John, I have one of those map ones because I made it myself. So I made a map one too. You can see Charlestown, New Hampshire in the background. That's where he grew up. A few of them are dual autographs. I have Pudge and David Ortiz and Pudge and Johnny Bench. One of my favorite cards is this one with Pudge and Ivan Rodriguez. Notice I only call one of them Pudge. This one is a custom by my friend Andy Woolley. Now, what he does is he takes a piece of tickets and embeds them into cards, and these are gorgeous. Look him up, Andy Woolley, Millburg Cards. If he has some amazing stuff. I have old boxes of ice cream. My wife loves that. Another really talented card artist is Scott Hodges, who made me this wood etching. It is really cool. It's it's on the back. And of course, I have some Heavy J as well. Look at that. That's gorgeous. And not only does he do these awesome glitter cards, he made this custom Carlton Fisk Blackhawks card, which is one of my favorite cards in this collection. It's just the color pop. It's just such a unique card that I appreciate that. And I've got some John Racanellis as well. This Japanese inspired one, as well as Carlton Frisk, the literal series. You know and love the literal series, I'm sure. But then I also have a Cartoons Carlton Fist. So I have a Carlton Fist and a Carlton Frisk. I also have a lottery ticket. I didn't win, but it was Fisk, so I did win. Unopened stuff, Don Russ Champions, Action All Stars, 89 Fleer Cello. Some more good art. This one is a Carl Scanberg. He's a Chicago guy. He does amazing work. And then when the White Sox put out greeting cards, a box of greeting cards, these are done by Todd Radom. And he did a whole set back in like 2017. He did these. And that artwork was also featured on the ticket stubs that year. So, I mean, I don't have a whole lot of stuff that's not cards, and I'm working on that. That's one of my goals going forward. I do have like this from Carlton Fisk night. I've got an old cassette tape of Carlton Fisk telling his stories. I've also got '81 vinyl, Inside Baseball with the Chicago White Sox. Back when I worked at NBC Sports Chicago, somebody saw that and figured I would love it, and I do. I really appreciate that. Various bobbleheads and stuff like that. Yeah, it's so much fun to collect Fisk, but at the same time, it's a curse because every year Topps puts out an autographed card that has 10 copies, and then I have to fight guys on eBay for them. That's annoying. Plus all the variations and rainbows, but it is what it is. Collecting Fisk is fun. At least I appreciate they put out new cards from retired players every year because it gives me something more to chase. So that's about it. I'm sure there's a bunch of other cool stuff that I wanted to mention but forgot, but I can't take forever. So I'll leave it at that. Thanks for inviting me, Jason. I appreciate the opportunity.
You got it. You got it. Now, let's see. I know we got more questions that came in. We'll still save those for the end if that's okay. Jeff English, if you want to come off mute, you're up.
Hi everybody. My name's Jeff English. I live in Tallahassee, Florida. I grew up in Pensacola, Florida. My mom was born and raised in Chicago, so I come across my Chicago fandom honestly, so to speak. I have a grandmother that was born, lived, and died waiting for the Cubs to win a World Series. And when I was a kid, because my one of the things my dad got really right was if there was a station available on cable when cable first started, we got it. And one of those was WGN. And so my brother and I, my older brother and I used to watch the Cubs games religiously. And there's an old saying that goes something like, the team or player you fall in love with when you're about 7 years old is the team or player you love the rest of your life. And that was true for my brother and I with the Cubs. And I was 7 in 1979. And as some of you may know, that was Dave Kingman's, like, the finest season of his career with the Chicago Cubs. And I can't really explain it other than to say that my appreciation of baseball is not terribly sophisticated. And so it seemed to me that the guy that hit the ball the farthest and the most often out of the park was clearly the best player. It was a shock to me in 1983 when I got my first Bill James abstract, and I expected him to tell me how great Kingman was in 82 because he had led the league in home runs, but Bill James compared him to Marv Throneberry. And it was a little bit of a learning experience for me baseball wise. Um, the first the first Kingman card I ever had was the 81 Topps card. I know when I got it, this is the very card. It was April 19th, 1981. It was Easter Sunday, and the Easter Bunny was good to me. And he brought packs of cards to the house, and I got my first Dave Kingman card. I'd been a Kingman fan for about 2 years prior to that. Um, Insofar as collecting Kingman, obviously, with most any player, the rookie card is pretty essential. His rookie card was 1972. He was a very clean-cut young man, fresh out of USC. He had a fairly short minor league career before he got called up to the Giants. Um, One of my favorite early Kingman cards is the 73 Kellogg's card. It's my favorite Kellogg set, and that's with understanding that uh they introduced the fancy 3D technology the next year, and then it was kind of on from there. And with all due respect to the 3D technology for Kellogg's cards, I always preferred this particular set. I think there's a lot of very beautiful cards in it, and this is one of them. Um, Kind of an essential card, and let me say, all of the cards I'm showing, these are the cards I had when I was a kid. I never got to the point where I thought I need to upgrade these or make these better or improve the condition of the card I have. They're just the ones I acquired either by hook or by crook as a kid in various trades. Some of them very lopsided, admittedly, because my passion for Dave ran pretty high. But Jason wrote a piece for Sports Illustrated about this particular card, and it's the 74 Topps card. And it's arguably one of the most terrifying cards in the history of Topps because I know it's difficult to see me holding up to the camera here, but it's literally a bunch of demons and possessed people watching Dave probably strike out statistically speaking, which is sort of sad, but um my all-time favorite Topps issue Dave Kingman card is the 1977 Topps issue. The All-Star logo for Topps that year matched exceptionally well with the Mets team colors. It clearly looks like maybe Dave just crushed one. I can rattle off to you the years when he has a card where the photo looks like he struck out, but this is one of his high water marks as far as the baseball card picture goes. And the 77 Top set is one of my favorite Top sets of all time. Um, I have a graded copy of the 78 card. Kingman, as some of you probably know, played for 4 different teams in 1977, and Topps did a really, really crummy job in 78 of airbrushing a Cubs hat onto his head. If I'm not mistaken, the actual photo is a photo of him with the Yankees. But with the internet being the way it is, I have seen variations where he has either a Padres or an Angels hat too, and I'm not entirely sure what to what to trust. But I believe it's originally a photo of him with the New York Yankees, which was the last team he played with in 1977. he played well enough for the Yankees. If you check the stats, he hit a bunch of home runs in a very, like, 8 games. He hit like 4 home runs, and they voted him a postseason share after that season, even though he was there for just a short amount of time. While I'm with Kingman with the Cubs, it occurs to me that I can sort of relate Kingman a little bit to Hack Wilson. Kingman signed with the Cubs in November of 1977. And although he graduated, or I don't know that he graduated from USC, but he did attend college. He often represented himself or had a lot of input with his agent. And while he was negotiating with the Cubs, and I think it was Bob Kennedy who was the GM at the time, and if that's wrong, forgive me. He thought that he was going to dominate at Wrigley Field, so he inquired as to what the RBI record was for a Cub player, over the course of a season. And Bob Kennedy was just basically like, Dave, it's a lot. And so Kingman asked to have an incentive written into his contract that he would get a bonus if he were to break the record for most RBIs in a season by a Cub player. And I think Bob Kennedy, there's a quote somewhere where he says something to the effect of, if Dave's driving in 200 runs in a year, we're having a pretty solid season. So, no problem. We'll give him whatever he wants. And Bob Kennedy also announced with the signing of Kingman, and this is a near quote. He said, I hate Dave Kingman, but I really believe he can help the club. And this was, of course, my favorite player. Now, in 1981, after Dave had exhausted his stay in Chicago, let me go back for a second because I have something that's sort of rare for Dave Kingman. I mentioned in 1977 he played for 4 different teams. He played for the Mets, the Padres, the Angels, and the Yankees. He played for all 4 divisions. He homered for all 4 divisions. He played for the Mets and the Padres the most. I think he played for the Padres maybe 56 games. And his Angels game total was minuscule, and like I said, he maybe played 8 games or so for the Yankees. So there weren't contemporary Angel or Yankee card issues for Dave Kingman. But there was this thing in 1977, sponsored by Family Fun Centers. And this happened to come out in 1977 during his roughly 56-game stint with the Padres. It has biographical information and stats on the back. And over the course of collecting Dave Kingman, it was years before I even knew that this existed. And it took me a long time to actually find one. I knew it existed for probably 6 or 8 years before I ever found one for sale. And I don't remember what I paid for it, but probably overpaid just for the sake of completion because I have probably mental health issues related to Dave Kingman collecting. As some of you might know, Kingman was traded from the Cubs to the Mets in February of 1981. And the Tops, to be fair, they seemed to be pretty on the ball in 1981. And if any of you recall, in 1981, they had a food issue. It was a Coke set. And there were only certain teams, the Yankees, the Red Sox, the Cubs, the Mets, I forget some of the other teams that had these Coke sets, and they were basically the 1981 card, like regular Tops issue, with a Coke logo up in the right-hand corner. And in 1981, like I said, Kingman was traded from the the Cubs to the Mets, and then he was included in the 1981 Topps traded set. And this was Dave Kingman, 1981, mustache, yada, yada, yada. He looks very similar to his appearance in the regular issue 1981 set. And as a Dave Kingman fan, I will mention it was an all-star card. He gets bonus points for that. Well, Topps, prior to the trade, had started printing or making test prints for some of the cards for 81, and one of the sets was the Cubs Coke team issue. And as far as I know, this might be just about the rarest thing that I have as a Dave Kingman collector. It's a proof of a 1981 Topps Dave Kingman Coke card as a Cub, but this card was never actually issued. Um, I don't know what the actual print run was on this or any of that, but I know that I very, very, very seldom ever come across them for sale. And maybe it's more common than I realize, but I don't believe that's the case. What I will say is that the correction that Topps made for 1981 for the Mets as a Met card, they picked a Disco Dave photo, or like maybe a Neil Young roadie photo or something for like Dave Kingman. This is clearly a photo of him from sometime in the 70s, and this is what they went with for the Topps Coke Mets Dave Kingman photo rather than something a little more perhaps contemporary. Um, like John was saying about it seems to be that people got in a little more into collecting during the pandemic, and that, for me, it had mostly always been Dave Kingman cards. And I have an album with like 50 signed Dave Kingman photos. My kids aren't gonna retire on that or anything. I have signed baseballs. I have a signed jersey, nothing game worn or anything like that. But I started looking at things a little bit outside the box, I think. One of the things I bought like early in the pandemic, and it's a Gem Mint. It's the only Gem Mint 10 graded card I have, where it's the 1982 Donruss Dave Kingman card. And this in the 77 Topps card are my two favorite Dave Kingman cards. And my mom has like a whole box of pictures I sat at the kitchen table and drew of this 1982 Dave Kingman card when I was 10 years old in 1982. I was kind of obsessed with it. I think they finally realized professionals didn't need to get involved. But I drew a lot of 1982 Dave Kingman cards when I was like 10 or 11 years old. But a couple of things that I picked up that I thought were pretty neat that I picked up during the pandemic, and I guess it's sort of thinking outside the box a bit. Um, this is the 83 Topps home run leaders card, and it's signed by all three players on the card. So it's Kingman, Gorman, Thomas, and Reggie Jackson. Jackson and Thomas tied, I think, with 39 homers, and Kingman led the National League with it's like 36 or 37. And all three guys have signed it. I've been looking for it. Gorman Thomas holds a special place in Dave Kingman fandom because in 1979, Kingman led the league in home runs, and Gorman Thomas was the league leader in the American League that year too. And I've been looking for a signed 1980 Topps league leaders card of Dave Kingman and Gorman Thomas, and that's one of the sort of elusive items out there. And then this is one of my favorites. It's the 1984 career home run leaders card from Topps. and this is signed by Schmidt, who's also one of my favorite players, Kingman and Tony Perez. When I saw that Phillies Cubs game in 1979, it was like the 23-22 or whatever the final was. And Dave Kingman, I was like, that guy's the greatest player I've ever seen. My dad literally was like, that Mike Schmidt fella's pretty good too. Uh, and I ended up collecting Mike Schmidt, but not as much as I did Dave Kingman. And it's probably the difference between like spending hundreds or thousands of dollars on a collection versus spending, I don't know, dozens of dollars on a collection. But again, during the pandemic, I started thinking a little bit outside the box. I found this, and I hope you can see this a little bit. It's an old Mother's Cookies advertisement for the 1984 Mother's Cookies set. And let me see if I can get no,
What are
you're
you looking for?
I'm trying to get the top. Uh, it's Dave Kingman and Bob Brinley. And there's just like these sort of random things out there like this. I guess out west when they would issue the cards, they would have a baseball card day at the stadiums. And so Kingman and Brinley were the two sort of faces of Mother's Cookies in 1984. One of the odder things I came across during the pandemic was a laminated signed menu from Kingman's short-lived restaurant in Chicago called Kingman's Landing. Um, you could get a cheeseburger basket for $1.85. The prices are pretty solid. And I don't know that there's many of these still. It's not something I see ever, pretty much one of these menus. And this one's in fantastic shape and signed. And I felt really fortunate to kind of come across it. And I can't tell you what led to the like eBay search that day, but obviously I was pretty down about the pandemic. And I came across this Dave Kingman signed menu. And that's pretty much how I remember the pandemic. And then for anyone that thinks that I'm not entirely committed in my life, I'm the only person I know that has a Spalding Dave Kingman signature wallet. And it's because my wife would call it mental illness, but I think it's just fandom. And we'll go from there with that. And that's there's other stuff too. I would show it's this issue of Sports Collectors Digest that has Dave Kingman on the front, and this is I think a New York Post print. The photo, what it's advertising, it was a print that was in the New York Post, I think. And the name of the artist escapes me right now, but I have an actual copy of the print signed by Kingman, but it's in storage because my wife and I differ greatly about what constitutes above the fireplace. You know, decorations or whatever, and I haven't won that battle yet, but I will, I assure you. But I really appreciate the opportunity to present to you guys, and Chicago's my favorite city. I love you guys, and I'm gonna sit here and try and tell you Dave King belongs in the Hall of Fame or anything. That would just be wrong.
If anybody has a lead on a trash can, a Dave King.
And there is such a thing as a Dave Kingman trash can from the late 70s, early 80s, and I've never found that. And then my great white whale, my Moby Dick, is the original artwork for the 82 Donner Stymie King, the Dick Perez. And I met Dick Perez's assistant at a couple of SABRs ago, a couple of conventions ago, maybe. And he told me that that's actually one of the original artworks that they've lost track of, that they know where a lot of them are, but they don't know where the Dave Kingman is. So if you have any leads on that, uh, I have two 15-year-old blonde children I can sell on the black market and do whatever I need to do to to acquire that. And otherwise, thank you all for the opportunity. And back to you, Jason.
Man, Jeff, that was great. We may have some mandatory reporters in our audience, so I just want to say I think Jeff was joking. Um, but, um, Man, great job. Great job, really, John, Chris, Jeff. If somebody had told me there were 17 more of these, of people going through their collections for 15 minutes or so, that would have been great news for me. I could literally just stay on and watch these all night. So I do hope other chapters out there, right, outside of Chicago or outside of Chicago focused collections will avail themselves of the opportunity to put this kind of thing together, whether it's Detroit, Pittsburgh, New York, whatever. If the Mets and Yankees need to be separated, that could probably be arranged, however you want to do it. We got along here in Chicago. We had some Sox, we had some Cubs. But this was just fantastic. I know a lot of questions showed up. So, and also just a lot of comments and fun and everything. So I'm going to kind of go through the comments really fast and then questions I'll just send to the appropriate folks, and then I see some hands up as well. So Michael Marsh had been looking forward to this presentation. Us too, as a planner, I'm going to say it sort of depended if any bombers arrived, how much I was looking forward to it, but we seem to have survived. Phil Bob David's grandnephew, great nephew, was surprised, I guess, by the recognition, but gave us a nice chance to talk about his great uncle. So that was awesome. Thanks, Mark, for that. Dennis Garcia, really impressed with John's collection. Mark was saying, is that Paul Newman? I wonder if he means, me on the screen, if he meant, Hack Wilson when he was looking dapper. But anyways, let's see. Mike Marsh, 33 Gaudy, really nice. Phil, great nephew of Bob David's. Those Prism cards are really cool. I think that was about the Hack Wilson. Hoyle, of course, has the SCFC set that Mike Aaronstein had his eye on for Mark. Jeff was asking, and John, I think this was when you had the Hack Wilson restaurant up, whether the building is still there. I don't know if you pay attention to landmarks or historic sites or anything at all, but would you know?
I have visited the site as a bus shelter and some other type of building. The structure, I've actually contacted the people in Niles and they think that it was torn down sometime between the 50s and the 70s. That's about all they could tell me. So
John, it said it was on Milwaukee, right? And you know what the intersection was? Milwaukee and
I
what?
think it was Milwaukee and Harlem, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, it's
Okay.
7480 Milwaukee. So Milwaukee and Harlem, it's kind of like the south
Yeah.
triangle at that weird intersection. So
Okay.
it's long gone though.
Got it. Okay.
All righty, great presentation, Mark Hoyle. A lot of guesses on Chris's Carlton Fisk collection. I think the closest without going over was Jamie Orcutt. So, Jamie, you officially win all of Chris's doubles. Mark Ormer throwing a little shade. Forgot he went to the White Sox. Cool. Yeah. Yeah, Dennis and I on the Saber Baseball Cards Facebook, we were just talking cameo cards. Dennis has a great Thurman Munson collection, and you all know Munson makes it onto a lot of cameos for 1970s tops. Dennis has a question. I guess, Chris, this would probably be for you. Is there a Fisk and Dion prime card? I guess Deion Sanders.
Not that I'm aware of, but if there is, I need it. I don't know why I didn't think about that, but I need to have that now.
Okay. Some love for the 82 Fisk in action card. I know you showed the Scott Hodges Keith Haring style card art of that on the wood. Uh, oh, question probably for John. How much is an autographed Hack Wilson card worth now?
Oh boy, Hack Wilson autographs are very difficult to come by. The cheapest that I've seen in an unauthenticated state are usually about 800 bucks. And there's
Wow.
a few signed cards that were issued, I think, by Topps and maybe historic autographs that are available on eBay, but they're like $6,500. I mean, they are just
Wow.
way out of my price range. So I would love to add a Hack autograph at some point to the collection, but still on the search for that one.
All right. So we're going to paste the GoFundMe into the chat on that. For Michael Ortman, this is kind of a cool memory, I guess directed at Chris, but probably cool for all of us. Michael Ortman says one of his most cherished baseball memories, opening day 1981, sitting behind Trib columnist David Israel, his last day in Chicago. Pudge hit a grand slam in his Comiskey debut. Unbelievable. So right on.
By the
Question.
way,
Yeah.
by the way, so I do have this of the 82 in action, and I also have the Topps in action, and then I have the OPT in action, as well as the Gummy Arts version. So that is a great card.
Very cool. Something I'll mention maybe for Jeff English is Mike Noren of Gummy Arts. I was talking to him one time, and I'm probably remembering some detail wrong. So we can Jacob never minds making small sound edits to these files before we post the recording. But I think for Mike, he started collecting in 1980, and his favorite card that year was the Dave Kingman Gorman Thomas home run leaders card, and that was, I think, one of the earlier cards he made as well. I may be getting some detail wrong, but I know that
I
was
mean,
one of his favorites.
Gorman was sort of a legendary slob, and I mean that affectionately. That's not a criticism. I love the guy. He's like that era of slugger, George Foster, Gorman Thomas, Dave Kingman, Mike Schmidt, whatever, all those guys. But yeah, I mean, it's hard not to love Gorman.
Yeah.
By the way, speaking of Gorman, he at least his last time I was there, there are jars of Storm and Gorman's sauce available at the Mars Cheese Castle in Wisconsin. In case anyone's interested in that. Also, number two, I forgot about this, but Dave Kingman went to Harper College, Community College in Palatine here, and I went there as well. So I have a little connection with Kingman.
Awesome.
Nice.
Awesome.
Right on. Okay, let's see what we got. I know we had some hands up as well, so let me see if I can get us a little farther through. Okay. Mike O'Hare really likes the 77 Topps Carlton Fisk. That's a great card. SABR Moderator says ditto 1974, and then the aforementioned Topps in action. And RJ says, yep, you'll believe a catcher can fly. Michael Bush also 1977 with that action shot. Okay.
Back 1977. One of the ones that I was able to finally get my hands on was the Venezuelan sticker, which it doesn't even look real. It looks like a flimsy. It's like a flimsy photocopy. But yeah, then of course I have the badly miscut version of that.
All right, we got from Phil. Can you tell us again the name of your friend who made the cards with the stub? So I'll throw that out there as Andy Woolley, Milberg Trading Cards. You can find him online. He's got a cool shop, and he does the ticket ones are kind of custom. He can track down the ticket stub, but if you've already got the ticket stub, you just send it to him, and obviously you get a pretty nice price break if he doesn't have to go hunting on the stub. Mark says, fantastic job. Clayton Kershaw, well, you must have missed the first inning. Oh, CK is Chris Kamka. Okay, never mind. Fantastic job, Chris Kamka. Jeff with the question for later. Did Fisk know about your collection when you were doing TV for the White Sox?
No, he did not.
Yeah. What do you think he'd think?
I'm a weirdo. I don't know.
All right. And
I
then
did actually I did get a chance to talk to him once in a show in Rosemont. What happened was they moved it up an hour, but didn't tell me. So when I got there, he was like sitting there by himself, and I was like the very last guy. I guess he was waiting for me. I felt like a jerk, but he was nice. He was actually nice to me, and he signed my jersey. So yeah, I didn't tell him about the collection.
That works. Well, Hoyle may be sending you to eBay. He notes there's a Fisk question on the back of the 1979 Topps Paul Moskow card. Are you aware of this?
I am now going to pull the binder right away. And thanks, Russell, for letting me know about the 1982 Fleer cameo on the Rich Dower. I pulled that from that binder and is now comfortably in the Fisk binder. Going to go get that Paul Moskow right now.
Yeah, perfect. And some of you who maybe don't know, Russell has a tremendous Fisk collection as well, a little more biased toward the Red Sox than the White Sox. All right, we got Hoyle notes Kingman went to USC as a pitcher. Who knew, right? Katz talks about a monster shot that Kingman, I think we're on Kingman now, hit in Boston, and then he posts the retro sheet link. Mike Marsh loves the 77 Kingman, the facial expression that's fierce, the great shot. Let's see. Hoyle also notes there's a tough Fisk card from the 1981 Topps Coke set. So, yeah, tough Fisk, tougher Kingman, and impossible Hack Wilson from 81 Topps Coke. All right. There was a Bravo Jeff. I don't know if it was a specific event or the whole thing. Katz has a Kingman story. Does it involve a rat though?
No.
Okay, we'll take it.
It's kind of someone in line what Chris was saying about Fisk, because Fisk has a bad rep, but when I've met him too, very, very nice guy. So Jeff, so the Mets get Kingman in 75. And I grew up in the middle of Long Island. And I saw in the paper he was appearing at a bank in Lake Ronkonkoma, which is about where I lived. And I went, and literally no one else showed up. And I just hung out with Dave Kingman for like 10 minutes, and he was very nice. And, you know, my memory of him is like this giant guy who was very pleasant and was standing in a bank lobby with 12-year-old me and no one else.
That's fantastic. I'm so happy to hear that he was nice.
He was very nice to me.
That's awesome.
All right, we'll have to find out soon if anybody has a Hack Wilson encounter story. But Mark's got a Fisk story.
Yeah, so I grew up I was just kidding about the not knowing you went to the White Sox, but I will say, I grew up in New England, and Fisk was a big hero to all of us. And my sister, who is in SABR, big baseball fan, she's a few years younger than me, and she was in love, and may still be, with Carlton Fisk. Okay. And several years later, I was living near Boston, and she was visiting me. She was in college, I believe. And I said, guess what? Carlton Fisk is appearing at this card show tomorrow. Do you want to go? And she said, of course I want to go. So we went, and my sister, being in college, was wearing this sort of ironic button that said Nixon now. And we like walked through the line, and this Carlton Fisk looks at her and goes, oh, Russ Nixon. Yeah, I missed that guy. And my sister didn't know who Russ Nixon was, but I thought it was hilarious. And my sister later sold Carlton Fisk's a house in Sarasota. My sister had moved down to she's been in Sarasota for 20 years now, and I guess that's where Fisk relocated, maybe because of spring training, or maybe he has a lot of houses. And I'll also say that I didn't, no offense to anybody here, but I didn't really like the Wax Pack book that came out a few years ago, because I didn't like the way he treated Carlton Fisk in the book. So anyway, great job, Chris.
All right. With that, let me go. We've had a couple gentlemen patiently with their hands up. Let me start with Dixie.
Well, this has been a fantastic trifecta of programming. It's just great. It makes me even prouder to have next to me my binder that is full of Roberto Clemente, Ernie Banks, Al Kaline, and Brooks Robinson cards that I have. But as for John, this is one of the few cards that you didn't show that I'm sure you have of Hack Wilson. And just for equal time's sake, I think we ought to have Mrs. English come on and give us a couple of minutes of rebuttal.
Oh, we're all out of time. No, and
Yeah,
then
abort.
yeah. All
It's
right.
so funny when you said you were looking for a she said you were looking for a trash can. I assumed she meant for your stuff, not as a
No,
collectible.
I mean there was an actual Dave Kingman, like one of those round metal trash cans from like the 70s or early
Awesome.
80s. And there's a Dave Kingman one that was
Wow.
made, but I've never found one. And it's that and of course the original artwork for the 82 Diamond
Yeah.
King, which I'm willing to sell children for.
No
And
good.
that's not real.
I will
mean,
say 26 years ago when we got married, I took one of his baseball cards to a bakery and had a
Oh, this was
picture of
controversial.
Dave Kingman put on the groom's cake. So I have supported his career from his collection from day one.
He took the 1976 SSPC card. She didn't put it in a holder. She just took it all naked out there in the world, you know. And I was fortunate it even came back with reasonable corners.
People waiting to ask questions.
Well, I just want to add that Jeff was much worse behaved this year that you didn't come to the conference. So I think we'd all
I heard.
appreciate it.
We're not going to discuss that, Mark. I heard the stories.
We would all appreciate it if you come next
I
year
will do my best.
Okay.
I don't do well on my own.
No, he, at least to Jeff's credit, he did admit that over and over again.
For the record, I have that card, Dixie, but I also have all three of the variations. There's a first printing with the Major League logo, and then there's one where it doesn't say first printing. So I'm good there.
Covered. You're covered.
Trifecta.
Covered.
All right, Spike, you had a question, I think.
Yeah, relaying that last year about this time, I interviewed a former trainer with the Mets, and he spoke through the people that he really liked working with, and on both sides of the sort of the dugout management side, and then on the field side. And he said he thought Kingman was one of the best guys to be in the clubhouse with. And he said Kingman really knew how to play a role to rile up the media if he wanted to, or to get things from the team when he did or didn't want them. But that person to person as a trainer, he thought he was pretty terrific. And he was one of the guys that he really remembered fondly from his couple years there.
Very nice. Well, gang,
He's up to
we
two
did-
fans.
2 fans. If only he'd known about that bank thing.
And the bank.
we did it. We made it through one of these with no bombers, 3 tremendous presentations, and honestly, other chapters, other player collectors, whatever, get in touch. I kind of like the Chicago thing that we had going, but I mean, if it had to be, Carl Hubble, Steve Garvey, and Anthony
Kirk
Rendon,
Gibson.
with no real thematic link, I mean, that probably works too. So get in touch if you've got ideas. I can certainly help. But a lot of fun. Let's just give a virtual hand or clap emoji to our 3 presenters. And we will post the recording if you want to relive any of the fun or have friends who couldn't make it today. All right. Take care, everybody. We'll see you at the next
See
one.
everyone.
Thank you.
Jason.
Bye-bye.
Take care.